It was a warm September afternoon in Austin when I pulled up in front of the old ranch house. The wind chimes on the porch clinked faintly, the same sound that once meant safety and summer afternoons filled with laughter. Now it felt unfamiliar, almost hollow. I hadn't been here in over a year, not because I didn't want to, but because I'd been told there was no one left to visit. When the front door creaked open, I was met not with a hug, but with a voice as cold as the rusted screen door it came through. "So, you finally decided to show up," Grandma said, her eyes sharp, her arms crossed. I froze. Her words stung more than I expected. "Grandma, what's going on?" I asked, stepping closer. "They told me you were in a nursing home. That you and Grandpa—" "Don't!" she cut me off, raising one trembling hand. That single gesture felt like a slap. "Your grandfather called you Elena, over and over on his deathbed. He kept asking for you, his little scientist, but you never answered. You never visited." My breath caught in my throat. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "Please, let me see the number he was calling." She hesitated for a moment, then disappeared into the house. When she returned, she was holding a small notepad, the corners worn, the pages slightly curled. She handed it to me. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting instantly, but the number on the page wasn't mine. Not even close. "This isn't my number," I whispered. "I've had the same one since high school." Her brows furrowed. "They told us you changed it when you went off to college," she said, her voice quieter now. "Said you didn't want to be bothered, that you wanted space, that you were ashamed of us." "No," I said, stepping back, my legs suddenly weak. I grabbed the porch railing for support. "Grandma, I came home last spring break. I came here. Vanessa was here. She said no one was home." Grandma's face turned pale. "We were here. We've always been here. Elena, what are you saying?" "They lied to me," I said, anger rising in my chest like a wave. "They told me you and Grandpa had been moved to a care facility out in Cedar Ridge. They said visitors weren't allowed because of quarantine, that it was best I stayed away and focused on school." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked as if the wind had been knocked out of her. "They said you didn't want to see us," she finally whispered. "That you said you had a new life now, that we didn't belong in it." A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp and shaky. "I never said any of that. They cut me off from you on purpose. They didn't even tell me Grandpa was sick until it was too late. They told me the funeral was at 1 p.m. today. I got to the church, and it was empty." She blinked slowly and sat down on the porch swing like her knees could no longer carry her. "The funeral was at 9 a.m., she murmured, realization dawning across her face like a shadow. They told everyone you didn't show, that you didn't care." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I would never miss his funeral. Never. He was the only one who believed in me. The porch blurred as my eyes filled with tears. Without thinking, I dropped to my knees beside her and buried my face in her lap. For a long time we said nothing. Only the wind spoke, whispering through the trees like it, too, carried secrets. "He died thinking I didn't care," I sobbed. "We know the truth now," Grandma said softly, stroking my hair like she did when I was little. "We know, Elena." Grandma wiped her tears with the edge of her sleeve, then looked at me with a steadiness I hadn't seen in years. The sadness in her eyes hadn't disappeared, but now it was laced with something sharper. Resolve. She stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust from her skirt, then walked into the house. I followed her in, unsure of what came next. In the living room, everything was exactly as I remembered, except the air. It was heavier now. She picked up the phone from its cradle by the kitchen wall. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed, but when she spoke, her voice had returned to that unshakable firmness I remembered from childhood. "Betty." "Yes, it's me," she said flatly. "I need you, Jacob, and Vanessa to come over. Right away." I heard a muffled voice on the other end. Grandma cut in before it could finish. No, it can't wait. I'll be expecting you within the hour." She hung up without saying goodbye. Then she turned to me. "The lawyer is on his way too," she said, her voice calm, but underneath it, something was burning. "Your grandfather. He left some things that need to be read aloud. In front of everyone." I didn't say a word. I only nodded. I wasn't ready for what was coming, but I had nothing left to lose. An hour later, the doorbell rang. "Stay in the kitchen until I call you," Grandma said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. I sat at the small kitchen table, the one where Grandpa used to drink his morning coffee, while reading science articles I'd clipped out for him. Through the wall, I could hear their voices, Mom's overly cheerful tone, Dad's calculated politeness, Vanessa's trademark bored sigh. Then silence. And finally, Grandma's voice, clear and cutting. "Please, everyone, take a seat. Mr. Cullen Reeves is here to read David's will." That was my cue. I stepped into the living room. All three heads snapped in my direction. My mother's fake smile faltered. My father's face went ghostly pale. Vanessa's lips parted, but no sound came. I could see the calculations spinning in their minds. Why was I here? Why had Grandma invited them under false pretenses? Mr. Reeves opened his briefcase slowly and pulled out a thick envelope. The kind that didn't just contain legal instructions, but secrets, too. He cleared his throat. "I, Walter Dawson, being of sound mind and clear intention, declare this to be my last will and testament." The room went utterly still. Mr. Reeves continued reading. "To my beloved wife, Helen Dawson, I leave our family home and a lifelong financial provision for her care and comfort." Grandma's expression didn't change. She already knew. "To my granddaughter, Elena Dawson, I leave the newly constructed research facility at 482 Pine Ridge Lane, including all laboratory equipment, intellectual property rights to any ongoing projects under my sponsorship, and the funds required for continued development and staffing." The room cracked. It was subtle at first. A sharp inhale from Dad, the twitch of Mom's eye. But it was Vanessa who broke the silence. "You've got to be kidding me." Her voice shook with fury. "You gave her the lab? The whole damn facility?" Mr. Reeves didn't flinch. "And finally, the remainder of my estate, accounts, assets, and investments, shall be divided equally between my two granddaughters, Elena and Vanessa Dawson." The silence that followed was loud. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair screeched against the wooden floor. Her face was red, her lips curled in disbelief. "This is insane. No, no, I was supposed to get everything." "That's what you said." She turned on her parents, voice cracking. "You promised. You told me if I visited him, acted like the good granddaughter, played along, everything would be mine." I stared at her, frozen. They'd made her act, lie, manipulate a dying man for money. And she'd done it willingly. But Grandma wasn't done. "There's more," she said coldly, reaching into the drawer beside her and pulling out a folded letter. Her hand shook as she passed it to Mr. Reeves. "Walter wanted this read, too." Mr. Reeves unfolded the letter slowly, careful not to tear the brittle edges. The paper had yellowed slightly, but Grandpa's handwriting remained bold and firm, as if he had written every word with unwavering clarity. He cleared his throat before reading aloud. "To my dearest Elena, if this letter is being read, it means I'm no longer by your side. And though that thought breaks my heart, I hope these words carry some of the love I couldn't show you enough in life. You were always different, not in a way that needed fixing, but in a way that made the world richer. While others chased noise, you searched for truth. While they performed, you observed. You were my little scientist, my pride, my legacy." A sharp breath caught in my throat. I could already feel my mother's stare burning into me, but I didn't look her way. "I watched you grow up with questions in your eyes no one around you seemed interested in answering. I saw the way you clutched your little notebook at 7 years old, recording how long it took rain to fill a glass jar. I saw how your joy dimmed every time your mother brushed you off, every time your father changed the subject. And I watched helplessly as your brilliance made them uncomfortable because they could not understand it, and worse, because they never tried. Vanessa shifted in her seat. Mom crossed her arms. Dad looked away. Vanessa was always louder, easier to praise, more comfortable for them to parent. And so they poured everything into her: attention, affection, money. I don't blame her entirely for the way things unfolded. She played the part they wrote for her. But you, Elena, you built your own script. That took courage I admired more than you ever knew. A tear slipped down my cheek. Grandma reached for my hand, gently squeezing it. I remember once, after you won your first regional science competition, your parents didn't even come. They were at Vanessa's dress rehearsal. You came to the porch afterward, holding the trophy in both hands, unsure of whether to be proud or ashamed. You asked if we could put it in the box under your bed instead of on the shelf. You said, maybe if I don't show it, they'll stop looking at me like I'm someone else's kid. My heart broke that day. I felt the room shrink around me. My mother remained stiff. My father had gone pale. Vanessa was silent, biting her bottom lip. You deserved more than what they gave. Not just things, but recognition, warmth, space to be exactly who you are. And while I can't rewrite the past, I can make sure your future is built on your own terms. That's why I built the lab for you. That's why I changed the will. You are not a mistake. You are a miracle they never deserved. Mr. Reeves folded the letter slowly. The silence that followed was deafening. I remembered the trophies, the box under my bed, the way I used to sit for hours, rearranging them like puzzle pieces I didn't know how to display. I remembered hiding certificates in drawers. I remembered Vanessa saying, nobody likes a know-it-all, every time I open my mouth in front of her friends. And I remembered doing her homework for her. You're just better at this stuff, she used to say, dropping her books in front of me without even asking. Vanessa, that's cheating, I had told her once. Elena, help your sister. Mom had snapped from the hallway. Family helps family. But it was never help. It was control. There was a pattern. Vanessa demanded, my parents enabled, and I complied because I thought maybe if I was useful, I'd be loved. Sometimes I'd hear them talking when they thought I was asleep. I just don't get where she gets it from, Mom would whisper. She's not like us, Dad would say, almost amused. Maybe we brought home the wrong baby. They'd laugh. I never did. I stared down at my hands now, older, steadier, stronger than the ones that used to grip a magnifying glass in the backyard, trying to catch sunlight in a jar. Grandpa had seen me. He'd always seen me. And now, he'd made sure the rest of the world had to as well. I was always the quiet one, the one who stayed behind while the rest of the family moved like a polished unit. Vanessa always in the spotlight, my parents orbiting her like planets to a sun. I didn't need their attention, I told myself. Not really, but even lies grow heavy when you carry them long enough. While Vanessa danced on stage in glittering costumes, I sat in the back row of the auditorium, holding my breath every time Mom stood to applaud. She never clapped like that for me. I don't even think she knew when my science fair was. I remember one birthday, I must have been 10. Grandma and Grandpa had driven down from the ranch, and Grandpa gave me a microscope kit wrapped in newspaper with a bow made from twine. I was ecstatic. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Of course, she'd want a box of germs, she muttered. Mom laughed. Well, that's our Elena. Always the little oddball. That night, I set up the microscope on the kitchen counter, too excited to wait. I'd prepared slides of pond water, bits of onion skin, flower petals, anything I could get my hands on. But just as I leaned in to focus the lens, Mom's voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Elena, clean that up. Vanessa's friends are coming over. I don't want your science mess out. She didn't even look at me when she said it. That was the pattern. Vanessa had people. She had parties, celebrations, the kind of family photos where everyone was smiling. I had books, quiet, a world I built out of pages and formulas, because the real one had no room for me. Even when I achieved things, scholarships, awards, invitations to summer research camps, my parents treated them like chores. I have to fill out more paperwork. Can't you skip this one? We already did the last camp. What about Vanessa's trip to Miami? We can't be everywhere. They didn't realize those were the only things keeping me afloat. Recognition from strangers meant more than silence from my own blood. And it wasn't just neglect. Sometimes it felt like resentment, like my very existence complicated the story they wanted to tell about our family. At school, I overheard my mom talking to another parent once. Elena? Oh, she's our little genius, she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A bit intense sometimes, but we're trying to help her be more normal. I remember retreating to the bathroom and locking the stall, gripping the edge of the toilet tank to keep from shaking. Even in moments when I tried to reach them, when I got into the gifted program, when I was accepted early to university, they responded with fear, not pride. Are you sure you're ready for that? You'll be so far away. Don't rush through life, Elena. It's okay to be ordinary. But I wasn't ordinary. I never had been. And Grandpa knew. He was the only one who didn't try to make me smaller. He once found me crying behind the barn after Vanessa had told me I'd never be pretty enough to matter. I must have been 12. He didn't ask what happened. He just handed me a pocket-sized notebook and said, "Write the things they don't understand. One day the world will." That notebook stayed with me through high school, through every failed experiment, every lonely lunch, every invisible birthday. It was my anchor, my armor. Now, sitting in this living room, with that same family across from me, pretending I didn't deserve any of this, pretending I was the selfish one, I felt the full weight of those years settle around me like armor reforged. They had spent a lifetime trying to dim my light. But Grandpa built me a space where I could shine without apology. And now they had no choice but to watch. The silence after the letter was read didn't last long. Vanessa shot up from her chair, her face a flush of rage and disbelief. Her voice cracked as she spat the words. This is ridiculous. Why should she get anything? She wasn't even there. She disappeared for years, and suddenly she walks in and takes half of everything? The lab? The money? Her eyes darted to Mom and Dad. You said it was mine. You promised. My mother's face was blank, unreadable, but her fingers twisted in her lap like she was trying to wring water from air. We had an understanding, Vanessa continued, her voice rising with every word. I did what you asked. I played the role. I visited him when you told me to. I said all the right things. I was the perfect granddaughter. Her voice cracked. You made me beg a dying man for his favor. That sentence hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Even Grandma blinked. And now I'm supposed to just share? Vanessa let out a dry, bitter laugh. With her. I looked up, slowly meeting her eyes for the first time since I entered the room. I had no anger left, no fear, just clarity. You didn't visit him because you cared, I said quietly. You visited because you were told there'd be a reward. Vanessa froze. You never spent hours with him talking about books or experiments or his garden, I continued, my voice calm. You never sat by his hospital bed unless someone told you to. I may have been locked out by lies, but at least I was honest about how I loved him. Enough, Mom snapped, standing abruptly. This is not the time to lecture your sister, Elena. You don't understand the pressure we've all been under. Pressure? I repeated, nearly laughing. You mean the pressure of hiding the truth? Of isolating me from the only people who supported me? Dad stood, straightening his shirt collar like he was preparing for a boardroom meeting. Elena, let's be reasonable, he said smoothly. Think about what you're doing. You've already had your education fully paid for. All those science camps, the competitions, the international travel. Do you know how much that cost us? The room tilted. My breath caught, then steadied. You didn't pay for any of that, I said, voice low but sharp. Grandma and Grandpa did. Every application fee, every plane ticket, every piece of lab equipment. It was all of them, not you. Dad opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You made it clear from the start I wasn't your priority. You made that very clear. That's not the point, Mom snapped. Family means sacrifice. Vanessa needs this more than you. If you want to honor your grandfather's memory, you'll sign over your share. Grandma stood now. Slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. How dare you, she said, her voice so sharp the air seemed to thin. How dare you stand here in the house my husband built and speak of sacrifice? Mom blinked. Helen, no, Grandma snapped. You deceived him, manipulated him. You lied to his face while he was dying, and now you have the nerve to speak of family. She turned to Vanessa. You may have played your role, girl, but it was never love. It was a transaction, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't see it sooner. Vanessa's face twisted, but she said nothing. Grandma took a breath. Her hand gripped the armrest of her chair with quiet fury. I only regret that David left you anything at all. Then she turned toward the door. Leave, she said, her voice steady. All of you. You're not welcome here. No one moved. So she raised her voice, not in volume, but in conviction. Now. Mom tried to reason. Helen, we're family. Not anymore, she said. Vanessa stormed out first, heels clacking like gunshots on the wooden floor. My parents followed, muttering something about legal challenges and reconsideration. But they left, and for the first time in my life, they couldn't take anything with them. The house fell into silence again, a quieter silence, not sharp, just free. It's been 6 years since that day. 6 years since the front door slammed behind my parents and sister, their angry footsteps echoing off the porch like the last remnants of a storm finally blowing out to sea. I haven't spoken to them since. Sometimes their names pop up on my phone, unknown numbers, recycled emails, friend requests through fake accounts. But I delete them all without opening. I don't need to hear their apologies, not when they're only born of absence. They made their choice, and so did I. The lab Grandpa left me, my lab, grew from a private research space into something real, something that mattered. We named it the Walter Dawson Innovation Center, and we didn't just keep his name alive. We honored his faith. We specialize in sustainable agricultural technologies, microirrigation systems, adaptive crop genetics, eco-friendly pest management. Things that once lived in the margins of science fairs, now make their way into struggling farms across the state. Last month, I stood on a stage in San Francisco accepting a national grant for innovation in climate resilience. I wore a navy blue suit and my mother's silence like armor. The crowd clapped. The spotlight didn't blind me. I looked into it and didn't flinch. And beside the stage, framed under the foundation's logo, was a photo of Walter Dawson, smiling in front of a field of sunflowers. The caption read, "For the dreamers who invest in those the world overlooks." Somewhere, I think he saw it, Tara and Micah, my closest friends since university, now lead departments within the center. We laugh a lot. We still mess up experiments, still burn popcorn in the break room microwave. But we also change lives, not because we're smarter, but because someone believed we could. Sometimes I wonder if Vanessa ever thinks about that day, whether Mom still hosts dinner parties and says, "I have 2 daughters," with a practiced smile. I wonder if Dad still calls himself a man of principle. But most days I don't wonder at all. Yesterday, I was rearranging one of the old bookcases in the lab's library, something I hadn't touched in years. Tucked inside a battered copy of The Nature of Things, I found a photograph. I knew the moment I saw the faded edges. It was me, maybe 8 years old, crouched in the grass behind the barn, holding a magnifying glass up to a beetle on a leaf. Grandpa stood beside me, pointing to something in the distance. We were both smiling. On the back of the photo, in his careful, deliberate handwriting, he had written, "My little scientist will change the world someday." I sat there for a long time, holding it like something sacred, because now I know he was right. The sunlight streamed through the glass walls of our Napa Valley estate, casting long, golden rays across the marble floor. I stood alone in the kitchen, gripping the letter with trembling hands. The words at the top read, "Congratulations." Below that, the seal of Stanford University shone like a symbol of everything I had fought for. My heart pounded, not with anxiety but pride. After years of staying up until 2 a.m., studying while everyone else slept, this moment was finally mine. "Mom? Dad?" I called, trying to steady my voice. "I got in." "Stanford." "I got in." Footsteps echoed down the hallway. My mother appeared first, pristine in her pressed cream suit, heels clacking against the tiles. Her expression was unreadable, almost cold. My father followed behind her, his phone still in hand, his tie loosened like he hadn't bothered to prepare for anything important. "That's nice," Mom said, her voice soft but distant. "Stanford is very competitive." "Congratulations, Isla." I blinked. That was it. "No jug, no esmail?" I looked at Dad, hoping for more. "We need to talk," he said instead. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. We walked to the living room, the one we only used for guests or serious discussions. The Stanford letter still clutched in my hand, I sank into the velvet armchair. My parents sat across from me on the long leather sofa. Dad rested his elbows on his knees and sighed. "It's about your college fund," he began. "We've made a strategic decision." I froze. That word, strategic, it always meant Ethan. "Your brother's startup has gained some serious traction," Mom continued. "He's working on a new battery storage system. If it works, it could change the clean energy industry." I didn't say anything. I already knew where this was going. "We've decided to invest in his company," Dad said. "All of it." I frowned. "All of what?" Mom looked away. Dad didn't flinch. "The full amount, $300,000. My breath caught. The room tilted slightly. You mean my college fund? The money you've been saving since I was born?" Dad gave a stiff nod. "It's an opportunity we couldn't pass up." "Ethan's project," I stood abruptly. "You gave everything to Ethan? Without even asking me?" "You'll just have to take out loans like everyone else," Mom said coolly. "Or maybe defer a year. There's a perfectly good community college nearby." "Community college?" I laughed, but it came out choked. "You told me to aim for the stars. You promised me this was for my future." "You're being selfish," she snapped. "This is for the family." "No, y whisperat. It's for Ethan. It's always been for Ethan." My father's voice boomed across the room. "Enough, Isla. You will support this family's decision. Be mature." I looked at them, the people who had always told me to be responsible, to work hard, to earn everything I got. And I had, but it had never been enough. In that moment, something inside me cracked. A quiet, final break. I nodded slowly, folded the Stanford letter, and stood without another word. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just started packing. As I folded my clothes into the suitcase, no plan, no destination, just a primal need to leave, my mind kept looping back like a broken reel of film. I had spent the last 18 years preparing for a future that was never meant to be mine. Ethan had always been the golden child. For years older, he was charismatic, reckless, brilliant in that chaotic way that made people think he was destined for greatness. He'd breeze into a room with wild ideas and walk out with people nodding behind him convinced. Our parents saw him as a visionary, a genius, a leader, Even when he dropped out of college in his second semester to pursue innovation, they called it brave. When I skipped a grade in middle school, don't make Ethan feel bad. When I won first place in the state science fair, you should let your brother present the project next time. He needs the confidence. When I got a summer internship at a real engineering firm at 15, don't post it online. It might upset Ethan. It was always like that. My achievements were measured by how they affected him, not in how they reflected my efforts, my hours, my silent resilience, just in how much they threatened Ethan's ego. I remember one evening so clearly, it might as well have been tattooed on my memory. I was 16. I had just received an invitation to an international research camp in Geneva, fully funded. Only 10 students from the U.S. had been selected. I ran into the kitchen, glowing, holding the envelope out like it was made of gold. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. "We'll have to decline," he said. Mom nodded. "Ethan's therapist says he needs a reset. We've found a retreat for him in Bali. It's expensive, but we think it'll help." I stared at them, stunned. "But mine is free. I earned this." "We need to focus on Ethan right now," she said. "You'll have other chances." But I didn't. That was the chance. And they killed it with a shrug. From that day on, something in me changed. I stopped telling them about my wins. I just kept collecting them. Grades, awards, scholarships, like secret medals no one would ever clap for. My room became a museum of quiet success. Framed certificates on the wall, honor cords hanging from the mirror, trophies lining the bookshelf, achievements stacked neatly in a life where applause never came. And then there was the college fund. It had always been a thing. My dad would joke about it at dinners with family friends. Every month since she was born. "Isla's going Ivy. We're ready." He even showed me the account once, told me how compound interest worked, how smart they were being to secure my future. It wasn't just money. It was trust. It was their word. And now it was gone. Just like Geneva. Just like every other time I thought maybe, just maybe I mattered. I zipped up the bag and reached for the drawer where I kept my tutoring money. I'd saved it for something special. A hoodie from the Stanford bookstore, a new laptop. The envelope held $150 in small bills. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Underneath it, I found an old photograph. Me and Ethan, back when we were still kids, maybe 10 and 14. We were both smiling, holding hands in front of a science museum. I looked up to him once. I used to believe that one day, when he stopped chasing pipe dreams, we'd be friends. Siblings for real. Now I knew better. He wasn't the problem. They were. They raised me to believe in fairness, effort, justice. But they never practiced it. Not once. They built me into a woman they never intended to support. So I pulled my hoodie over my head, slung the backpack onto my shoulder, and took one last look at the room that had held 1,000 quiet victories. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It hadn't in years. No goodbye note. No guilt. Just one truth echoing in my chest. I was done being the backup plan. The bus ride to San Diego took 10 hours, but it felt like years. I sat in the back, hoodie pulled low, face pressed to the cold glass as the vineyards and valleys of Napa blurred into endless freeway. The letter from Stanford was still folded in my backpack, along with a few changes of clothes, my laptop, and the envelope with $150 in cash. My entire life, 18 years of dreams, effort, perfection, fit neatly under the seat in front of me. No one texted. No one called. Not even a "where are you" from Mom. I kept staring at my phone screen until the battery drained to black. Somehow that felt fitting. It was 2:17 a.m. when I stepped off the bus into the damp coastal air of San Diego. The station reeked of bleach and overcooked fries. A man in a sleeping bag mumbled something to himself near the vending machines. I pulled my bag tighter, walking fast like I had somewhere important to be. I didn't. The first motel I found was a squat building with flickering neon that said Ocean View, even though the only view was of a cracked parking lot. The receptionist, a guy in a tank top with greasy hair and sleepy eyes, barely looked at me. Night rates, $42. Cash up front, he said. I hesitated. That was nearly a third of what I had. But I nodded, slid the bills across the counter, and took the key to room 3B. The room smelled like mildew and burnt coffee. The bedspread had cigarette holes. The lamp tilted at an odd angle, like even it had given up. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at nothing for a long time. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. It was something else. A hollow, echoing quiet. The kind that fills your chest when you realize you could disappear and no one would notice. I curled up fully dressed, hugging my backpack like it was the only thing still tethered to me. And maybe it was. By morning, I had a plan. I didn't need their money. I didn't need their name. I just needed a job. A block down from the motel, tucked between a liquor store and a surf rental shack, was a bakery called Sea Whispers. The air outside smelled like yeast and sea salt. Inside, a woman with gray-streaked hair tied in a messy bun was yelling at a delivery guy about forgetting the almond flour again. Her name tag said Maria. She noticed me standing by the door. I must have looked like hell. "Something wrong with your mouth, kid?" she barked. I swallowed. "No, ma'am. Just wondering if you're hiring." She raised an eyebrow, looked me over. My oversized hoodie, the circles under my eyes, the way I clutched my bag like it held the rest of my soul. "You ever wash dishes?" "Yes, ma'am." "You lie good. That's a start. Coming back." And just like that, I had a job. Minimum wage. No benefits. No questions. Maria was tough, but fair. She yelled often, but not cruelly. I scrubbed pans and wiped counters and swept floors until my fingers cracked from the soap. But every evening, when the last croissant was sold and the last latte poured, she gave me a hot meal and let me sit by the window with a notebook and my laptop. I watched tourists come and go. I watched sunsets I never had time for before. I watched myself slowly begin to unlearn the silence. No one here knew my last name. No one compared me to a brother who could do no wrong. No one reminded me of the future I'd lost. It was terrifying. It was liberating. One night, I asked Maria why she hired me. "You looked like someone who'd been pushed off a cliff," she said. "I've seen that look before, and I know what it means." I looked down at my scraped knuckles. "What does it mean?" "It means you either crash," she said, lighting a cigarette, "or you learn how to fly." That night, I opened my laptop and created a folder on my desktop. Its name was simple: Start Over. No one in San Diego knew the name Isla Carter, and I liked it that way. I started introducing myself as Kate. It was simple, common, clean. I didn't even think twice. The first time Maria introduced me to a supplier as Kate, our new dishwasher, I didn't correct her. I just smiled, wiped the flour off my hands, and shook the man's hand like it had always been mine. Kate didn't cry in motel bathrooms. Kate didn't flinch every time a parent praised their child. Kate was too busy planning. Every evening after work, while Maria counted cash and closed the register, I sat by the bakery's front window with my laptop open and fingers flying. I built a simple website from scratch using the HTML and Java I'd learned in AP Computer Science. White background, navy font, minimalista logo, a single tagline, elite academic coaching from the Ivy League to you. I didn't lie. I didn't say I attended Stanford. I wrote, accepted to Stanford University, class of 20XX, deferred. It was technically true. I created profiles for packages, SAT prep, college essay consulting, AP tutoring. I even listed fake testimonials from past clients, each with carefully chosen first names and vague praise. "We couldn't have gotten into Columbia without Kate." Ariella, parent, clear, calm, and incredibly smart. James, student by the end of the week. I had business cards printed at an all-night print shop. I walked back with them in my pocket like they were gold. The first client came faster than I expected. One of our regulars at the bakery, a woman named Vanessa, who always ordered almond croissants and almond milk lattes, overheard me helping Maria's niece with her trigonometry homework during a break. "Do you tutor?" she asked, brows raised. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "College admissions, test prep, STEM subjects mostly." "Good. My son's flunking AP chemistry. You're hired." That was the moment. The crack in the dam. By the end of the first month, I had 5 students, mostly rich, mostly bored, and mostly desperate for college dreams they hadn't earned. But I didn't judge them. I used them. Every mistake they made was another lesson I could monetize. I moved out of the motel and into a shared studio with 2 other girls who worked late-night shifts at a nearby hotel. We barely spoke, but that was fine. I wasn't there to make friends. By month 3, I was making enough to quit my shifts at Sea Whispers, though I still came in twice a week to help Maria with her books and inventory. She didn't pay me anymore. We developed a silent understanding. I helped her keep the bakery alive, and she helped me remember I was more than what they left behind. "You're good with numbers," she said one night as I recalculated supplier margins and optimized her delivery schedule. "But you're better with people. That's where the real power is." She was right. It wasn't just the tutoring. It was what the parents wanted from me. Hope, direction, someone who would tell them that their child, even with a 2.8 GPA and 0 extracurriculars, still had a chance at Yale, if they just worked hard enough. They didn't care about my name, or my family, or my pain. They only cared about what I could deliver. And I delivered. I began recruiting. Quietly. A girl who'd gotten into MIT but deferred. A guy who'd dropped out of Harvard because he couldn't afford the second semester. A valedictorian from Georgia who needed to pay rent. I offered them 70% of the fee. I handled branding, parent relations, scheduling. They tutored. It worked. Soon, elite academic coaching wasn't just me. It was a network, a system. I filed an LLC under Monroe Consulting. No trace of Carter. No connection to Napa. Just Kate Monroe, 20 years old, CEO of a fast-growing education brand with a wait list of clients stretching from Los Angeles to Seattle. The world that had once slammed its door in my face was now letting me in through a side entrance. And I wasn't going to knock. I was going to build a new house. My way. It was late on a Thursday night when the past came knocking. I had just wrapped a session with a senior named Lucas who was applying early decision to Yale, and we were dissecting his essay about overcoming adversity that mostly involved not making the tennis team his junior year. I logged off Zoom, rubbed my temples, and opened my emails. Buried between client inquiries and tutor schedules was a message flagged important from my financial analyst, Marcus. Subject: New investment opportunity urgent, look attached. An executive summary and debt profile for Carter Tech Energy Solutions. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen that name in over a year. I hadn't spoken it in almost 2. I clicked. The file opened with a simple header, Confidential Internal Review Investor Package, and there it was. My father's company. The pride of Richard Carter. The legacy Ethan was supposed to modernize with his vision. Except the numbers told a different story. The valuation had plummeted 60% in 18 months. A failed partnership with an energy startup in Berlin had cost them $12 million. Their flagship product, a next-gen battery unit, was stuck in legal limbo over intellectual property violations. My breath hitched when I saw the project name. Project Atlas. No, it couldn't be. That was mine. I'd developed a version of that exact storage system, cleaner, more scalable, more stable, for a private energy firm 6 months ago. My design, my equations, my simulations. It had become the backbone of Blue Nova Systems, a subsidiary I'd helped fund under Monroe Ventures. And now Carter Tech was pushing an inferior, barely functional copy. Ethan's signature was on the proposal. He'd stolen the concept. Or tried to. Sloppily. The file went on to detail mounting debt, investor losses, and a desperate need for a capital injection. They were seeking $50 million to avoid total collapse. The final page listed potential investors, a short list of tech firms, venture capital funds, and Monroe Holdings. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the name I'd chosen years ago to break from the family that discarded me. They didn't know. They couldn't possibly know that Monroe Holdings, on paper a faceless conglomerate, was run by the girl they'd once told to be practical. They were circling the drain, clutching at anyone who might save them, and they were about to ask me for help. I closed my laptop slowly, letting the weight of it all settle. The irony would have been laughable if it hadn't been so deeply satisfying. After all the begging I'd done at 16 just to be seen, to be valued, not praised, just heard, now they needed me more than I ever needed them. I thought about letting them drown. Let Ethan choke on the ashes of his genius. Let my father watch his empire collapse. Let my mother taste what it was like to be told no for the first time in her life. But something inside me shifted. No, that wasn't the plan. Letting them fall wouldn't be enough. I wanted them to see me, not as the daughter they dismissed, but as the woman they never thought I could become. The woman who held all the cards, quietly, completely. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. Set up a meeting, I said, but keep the Monroe name on the paperwork. I don't want them to know who I am. Not yet. He paused. Any conditions? I smiled to myself, eyes fixed on the screen where Ethan's signature glared back at me like a child's crayon scribble. Not yet, but trust me, there will be. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the same glass corridor I had walked down so many times as a child, back when I still believed this building represented something permanent. Carter Tech headquarters hadn't changed. Same gleaming floors, same self-important marble statue in the lobby, same receptionist desk where I once waited while my father gave bored presentations behind closed doors. Only this time, I wasn't here to be ignored. I was here to take everything back. The assistant assigned to escort me, young, nervous, clearly new, called me Miss Monroe with such respect it almost made me laugh. She offered to take my coat. I declined. I wanted them to see me exactly as I was, sharp-angled navy blazer, silk blouse, heels that echoed with every step. The kind of woman, my mother once said, tried too hard. I was no longer Isla Carter, and I was certainly no longer trying. The boardroom was a rectangular tomb of desperation, dressed in luxury. Leather chairs, walnut table, 10 men and women in suits, eyes heavy with worry. And at the head, just as I expected, sat Richard Carter, CEO and relic of his own empire. Helen sat beside him, posture flawless, mouth a thin, tight line. And Ethan, of course, lounged like he owned the room, legs splayed, phone in hand, thumbs dancing over the screen like none of this concerned him. Miss Monroe, my father said, rising. We're honored to have you here. We've heard remarkable things about your firm. His handshake trembled, just enough to give him away. Let's get to it, I said calmly, taking a seat across from them. I understand you're looking for a $50 million rescue. He nodded, flipping through the printed presentation he'd prepared. Charts, future projections, endless justifications. I let him talk. I watched his mouth move like a man rehearsing a script, desperate to sound confident. When he finished, I opened my laptop and connected to the boardroom screen. A graph appeared, bright, brutal, and clear. Your company's downward trajectory began approximately 20 months ago, I said, coinciding with your investment in Project Atlas, which, as you may or may not know, bears a troubling similarity to an existing proprietary model developed by Blue Nova Systems. I let the words hang in the air like smoke. My mother's fingers twitched. Ethan looked up for the first time. My father cleared his throat. We weren't aware of that overlap. No, I said. but I clicked to the next slide, my slide. The original schematics I had created. The same ones Ethan had tried to replicate and failed. How do you, my mother began, then stopped. How do I know this? I smiled faintly. Because I built it. I own it. And I've been watching Carter Tech stumble through it for months. My father's face went pale. Ethan stood abruptly, knocking over his water glass. You're not. You can't be. I am, I said, turning to look at him directly. Hello, Ethan. Silence fell over the room like a curtain dropping. Helen's voice cracked first. Isla. I leaned back, folding my hands neatly in my lap. It's Kate now. Kate Monroe. But yes, it's me. The daughter you emptied a college fund to feed your son's fantasy. The one you told to be mature while you threw my future away. Richard's hands curled into fists. You lied. No, I said quietly. I left. You forced me to. You could have come back, my mother whispered. I laughed soft but sharp. Come back? After you handed him $300,000 and told me to try community college. Ethan tried to regain control. This is ridiculous. You're just bitter. No, I said, rising slowly. I'm successful. And you're bankrupt. I turned to the board of directors. Let's talk about the deal on the table. They sat forward instantly, desperate for any solution. I outlined the terms: full acquisition of Carter Tech debt by Monroe Holdings, immediate technology transfer from Blue Nova Systems to save the flagship product, and a complete restructuring of leadership. Ethan scoffed. You can't fire me. I'm not firing you, I said coolly. I'm removing you. Legally. Permanently. My mother stood. You can't do this to your family. You're right, I replied. I can't. But to me, this isn't family. This is business. Richard's voice cracked for the first time. What do you want from us? I met his eyes and, for a long second, said nothing. Then, calmly, evenly, I want you to say it. Out loud. That letting me go was the biggest mistake of your life. He looked down. My mother wiped her cheek. And Ethan finally went quiet. After a long moment, my father nodded. It was good, I said, collecting my things. The paperwork will arrive by morning. You'll sign. You'll step down. And Carter Tech will become something worth saving. At the door, I paused and turned back. Oh, and Mom. I smiled. Remember that community college you once suggested I try? They're now one of my foundation's biggest scholarship recipients. Funny how things work out. Then I walked out, heels clicking, heart steady, the weight of a decade lifted in a single stride. The city glittered below as the car glided silently down the highway. I sat in the back seat, watching the skyline pass like a memory I had once dreamed but never dared to believe would be mine. San Francisco looked different now. Smaller, tamer, or maybe I was just bigger than I'd ever been. Maria sat beside me, flipping through the signed documents with a practiced eye. She still wore the same leather jacket, the same chipped nail polish, but something about her presence always made the world feel a little clearer. So, she said, closing the folder, Carter Tech is yours. What now? I took a sip of the green tea she'd handed me. Perfectly steeped, no sugar, exactly the way I liked it. Now we fix it, I said. Strip de ego. Clean the books. Turn it into something that matters. She raised an eyebrow. And your family? I shrugged. They'll adjust. Or they won't. Either way, it's not my responsibility anymore. The truth was, I didn't need their approval. Not anymore. The power I held now wasn't in their hands. It never had been. They just made me believe it was. That belief kept me small, obedient, replaceable, but they were wrong. In my office, framed neatly on the wall, hang 4 things. The Stanford acceptance letter I never got to use. My first business license under the name Monroe Consulting. A photo of the storefront of Sea Whispers with Maria standing in front, smiling and holding a tray of croissants, and a cheap plastic name tag that reads, Kate Dishwasher. Each one tells a different story of the girl I was, the woman I became, and the journey no one planned for me, least of all my family. Sometimes I wonder if I would have built all this had they supported me. If they'd said, "We believe in you, Isla," would I still have found the fire? Maybe not. Maybe comfort would have made me complacent. Maybe love, or the illusion of it, would have made me stay. But they didn't, and I didn't, and that made all the difference. Because I didn't just survive. I didn't just succeed. I built something bigger than them, bigger than their expectations, bigger than their legacy. I built something of my own. And every time they see the name Carter Monroe Technologies on a magazine cover or a news segment or a stock ticker climbing higher and higher, they'll remember the girl they told to try community college. The girl they never looked back for. But I won't look back either. Not in bitterness. Not in anger, only in quiet triumph, because in the end, the best revenge wasn't taking anything from them. It was proving once and for all that I never needed them to begin with. I knew they didn't love me, not the way they loved the others, but I didn't expect them to wrap the proof in gold foil with a red satin ribbon. The room smelled like buttercream and sugar. My niece Mia was unwrapping her third gift, a personalized iPad case with her name stitched into it in rose gold thread. Across the table, my mother smirked and gave a slight nod toward me. A large box had been placed in front of me, glittering under the overhead lights like a trophy no one ever meant to win. I didn't want to open it. Something in me already knew. Lily sat beside me, her little legs swinging under the chair. She wore the same lavender dress she picked out 2 birthdays ago. I had saved for months to get her a new one, but the money went to help pay the down payment for my sister Caitlin's vacation home, at my parents' request. "You're better with money," they'd said. "She just needs a little help." I took a deep breath and tugged at the ribbon. The lid came off easily. No resistance. No surprise. Just air. No letter. No gift. Not even a joke coupon. Just the hollow kind of nothing that's been practiced over years. I stared at it for a long moment, like maybe if I looked long enough, something would materialize. But emptiness doesn't grow things. It swallows them. "Mama," Lily whispered, leaning closer. "Did they forget something inside?" Her voice was soft, unsure, like she was afraid the answer would hurt. I didn't look at her right away. I looked up at my mother instead. She was already laughing at something Caitlin had said. Mia shrieked with delight as a pair of Bluetooth headphones appeared in another sparkly box. My father raised his glass with a chuckle and said, "Well, you never really sacrifice for others anyway, Vanessa." The laughter was light, effortless, cruel in its comfort. I closed the box gently. "No, baby," I said finally, brushing Lily's hair behind her ear. "They didn't forget. They just didn't plan to give us anything." She blinked up at me. I smiled the kind of smile that breaks your face from the inside. Then I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "But it's okay," I said. "I already got the best gift. You." She grinned. She believed me. Of course she did. She still believed good things about people who didn't deserve them, just like I used to. I sat there and ate a slice of dry, overly sweet cake. I complimented the frosting. I clapped when Mia showed off her new bracelet. Lily returned to her coloring book, the same one she'd brought from home. I watched the whole thing like I was at a play I hadn't auditioned for, but was still expected to applaud. That was the thing about my family. They always knew how to dress up cruelty as tradition, wrap neglect in celebration, make a performance of love without delivering any of the substance. And I had always played my part. The dutiful sister, the helpful daughter, the invisible one, but not anymore. That night, after the candles were blown out and the photos were taken and the leftover cake was boxed up for everyone but us, I tucked Lily into bed. She fell asleep holding a balloon someone else had discarded. I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and began writing a different kind of invitation. Not to a party, to an ending. When I was 8, my sister Caitlin got a pony for her birthday. Not just a ride at a petting zoo, an actual pony, with a braided mane, a pink saddle, and her name painted on the stall like royalty. She screamed with joy, ran circles around the yard. My parents beamed like they'd just placed a crown on her head. I got a pair of sensible brown shoes. They'll last longer, my mother said. That was the first time I understood the difference between joy and practicality, between being cherished and being managed. As we grew, so did the gap. Caitlin was the sensitive one, the creative soul. When she quit college midway through her second year, they said, she just needs to figure things out. When I got a full scholarship to a state university, they said, good, one less expense. I remember how they threw her a party when she announced she was pregnant at 21. Balloons, champagne, a gender reveal. They invited neighbors, church friends, even distant cousins I hadn't seen in years. I showed up late, straight from a double shift at my job. No one noticed. A month later, when her boyfriend disappeared and she had no way to pay rent, guess who stepped in? I didn't wait to be asked. I just wired the money. I paid for diapers. I covered her car, note for a year. I even let her move in for a while. Told my landlord she was a friend. I thought that was what family did. But my name never showed up on thank you cards. When I bought Mom new glasses, something she needed for months, she told people Caitlin picked out the frames. When I paid off Mom's credit card debt the first time, she told her sisters, it's handled. Not by whom, just handled. Every time I did something for them, they found a way to erase me from the story. When I took Lily on her first vacation, a simple weekend in Seattle Aquarium and soft-serve cones, I lied and said it was a work trip, because I knew if they found out, they'd guilt me into taking all of them. And I would have, because I wanted them to approve of me so badly. I gave and gave until there was nothing left to give. Not visibly, not in my bank account, but in places no one could see. They didn't know how often I skipped dinners to make sure car payments went through. They never asked what I wanted for my birthday. They never noticed that Lily's new backpack came from a secondhand store, and that I hadn't bought clothes for myself in nearly a year. But I never complained. I thought silence was strength. It wasn't. It was erasure. And the worst part, I allowed it. I let their comfort matter more than my own dignity. I thought if I didn't need much, they would love me more. But all I taught them was how to overlook me more efficiently. And Lily, sweet, observant Lily, was learning the same lesson. The way she watched me, I'd get praised for every little thing while she sat quietly with her drawing. The way she smiled politely when her name was skipped over. The way she looked up at me with hope, even when hope wasn't warranted. She was learning to make herself smaller to fit the space they'd allowed her, just like I had, and that terrified me more than anything else. Lily was turning 7. She didn't ask for much. She never did. A cake, some paper crowns, a few balloons in her favorite colors, seafoam and lilac. I'd been setting aside bits of money for months, saying no to lattes, doing surveys at night for $5 gift cards, anything to make it happen. I wanted it to be special, not extravagant, just hers. I called my mother, hopeful. Could we host it at your place? Just family. Something simple. She sighed like I'd asked for the moon. Your daughter doesn't need a party, Vanessa. She's not that kind of child. What kind of child is that? I asked. Attention-seeking. Loud. Needy. Lily isn't like that. She's quiet. I swallowed the heat in my chest. Lily was quiet because she'd learned not to expect celebration. Then my mother offered an alternative. Why don't we just combine it with Mia's? She's turning 8 the same week. One party, 2 girls, equal cake, equal gifts. It'll be lovely. I hesitated. She noticed. It'll be fair this time, I promise. I wanted to believe her, so I said yes. I told Lily we'd celebrate with Grandma and Grandpa, that they were planning something special. Her eyes lit up. She trusted me. She always trusted me. The morning of the party, Lily picked out her lavender dress again. I tried to hide the disappointment in my face. There hadn't been enough left over to buy her a new one. "You look beautiful," I said and meant it. At the house, balloons were everywhere. Pink, gold, white. A unicorn piñata hung from the tree. Cupcakes with Mia's initials in cursive sat on a tiered tray. There was a massive cake shaped like a castle with a sugar figurine that looked exactly like Mia on top. I looked around for the second cake, the second name, the equal part. There wasn't one. Lily sat on the porch swing while gifts were handed out. I tried to keep her distracted, pointing out butterflies, complimenting her braids. When it was finally her turn, my mother appeared with a single box, shiny, golden, tied with red ribbon. I already knew, but I didn't want to. I handed it to Lily. She smiled, gently untied the ribbon and opened the lid. Empty. She blinked, looked inside again, like maybe the gift had fallen into a corner. "Mama, did they forget something inside?" I felt my lungs collapse inside my chest. My vision narrowed. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to demand they look at her. Really look and see the child they had erased. But I didn't, because I already knew what they'd say. It was a joke. "You're too sensitive. Don't make a scene. You always ruin everything." So I did what I'd been trained to do. I smiled. I closed the box and hugged Lily close. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "I already got the best gift. You." She beamed. They thought I meant it. The rest of the afternoon blurred. Mia danced in circles with her new headphones. Caitlin gushed about how spoiled she was. My father laughed, loud and careless, tossing back a beer and saying, "Well, some kids just aren't built for the spotlight." Lily returned to her coloring book. I sat still, like a statue at someone else's celebration, and said nothing. But something inside me had shifted, quietly, irreversibly. They thought they handed me an empty box, but what they really gave me was permission. That night, after the house went quiet, after Lily drifted to sleep, holding the balloon someone else had dropped, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. The gold box was still sitting on the kitchen counter, empty and mocking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even touch it again. Instead, I began to untie the threads I had spent years quietly weaving to hold this family together. The first knot, the family vacation. We were supposed to go next month. An Airbnb beach house, 2 rental cars, groceries pre-stocked. The trip was already booked. I'd paid for everything under the promise they'd reimburse me in pieces, a lie I'd swallowed for years. I logged in, found the reservation confirmation, and clicked cancel. The full refund landed in my personal account. Then I opened the family group chat. Vacations off. Personal reasons. No one replied. Not a single question. The second knot, the emergency account. 3 years ago, I opened a joint bank account with my parents. At the time, it was just in case, a cushion for medical expenses or car repairs. But somehow, I'd become the only one depositing into it. Birthdays, grocery runs, surprise bills, they all came from that account. That night, I logged in and drained every cent. Then I closed the account. 2 hours later, a text from my mother appeared. Did something happen to the bank account? I left it on red. The third knot, the car. My parents had been driving a mid-size SUV for the past 4 years. It was registered in my name, insured under my policy, and the monthly payments came from my checking account. The only thing they paid for was gas when they remembered. I called the dealership first thing in the morning. Got the payoff amount. It was less than I expected. By Wednesday, the car was sold. Gone. Out of my name. Off their driveway. That Friday, my dad called. Straight to voicemail. Then came a message. "Hey, the car isn't in the driveway. Did you take it to get serviced?" I blocked the number. By Sunday, I was nearly done. I stopped answering Caitlin's texts, the casual "can you help me with" requests that always meant money, time, or labor. I stopped babysitting Mia. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't explain. I didn't announce. Because that's the thing about people who only value you when you're useful. The second you stop giving, they start noticing. Not you. Your absence. The drying well. The missed favor. The gap in the silence where their demands used to land. But I didn't disappear from the world. I became louder in the places that mattered. Lily and I cooked dinner together without interruption. We watched cartoons without checking phones. We took walks in the evening, laughing about nothing and everything. One night, she looked up at me and said, "Mama, you look happier. Did something good happen?" I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Yes, baby. Something very good." That was the night I realized I wasn't just removing myself from their life. I was finally stepping into mine. It started like clockwork. Monday morning, 9:42 a.m., a text from Caitlin. "Did you take the car? Mom and Dad are freaking out." I muted the conversation. Then came the emails. My father, the same man who once laughed and said I never sacrifice for anyone, was now requesting access to the joint emergency account. Except it wasn't there anymore. Gone. Closed. Emptied. Without a whisper. By Wednesday, my mother sent a voice note, her specialty. Dramatic, breathy, rehearsed like a bad audition. "We're trying to pay the electric bill, and the card isn't working. Vanessa, what's going on?" I listened, poured myself coffee, and said nothing. Then came the cherry on top, Caitlin's Facebook post. Just vague enough to dodge responsibility. Just pointed enough to bait sympathy. It's crazy how one person's decision can leave a whole family struggling. We're all just trying our best. Prayers appreciated. The comments rolled in like tidewater. Stay strong. Some people are just selfish. Is this about Vanessa? I thought she was helping your parents. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just watched. Watched the panic unfold like a script I'd seen 100 times. Only this time I wasn't in it. I was in the audience. And I wasn't clapping. That Friday, a final message came from my father. No more bravado. No more pride. We're not asking for much. Just help us get through the month. I don't know what's going on with you lately. I stared at the words for a long time. I thought about all the months I got through without their help. The nights I skipped meals so Lily could eat. The mornings I went to work exhausted so my mother wouldn't get a late fee. The weekends I canceled dates, rest, sleep, so I could fill a fridge that didn't belong to me. And not once did they ever ask if I was okay. I typed a reply, just one sentence. "If I'm such a burden, I figured you'd be relieved to be free of me." Then I blocked him. Because here's the truth. People who only love you when you're useful don't know what to do with you when you're whole. And for the first time in years, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't overdrawn. I wasn't financing the illusion of family anymore. I was just free. Lily and I packed a small overnight bag. We drove 2 hours north to a lakeside cabin I'd booked on a whim. There was no internet, no group chats, no voicemail notifications. Just us. We played board games, drank hot cocoa, built a snow angel in the backyard. As we watched the snow fall from the window, Lily curled up beside me and asked, "Mama, do people get tired of giving too much?" I blinked. "Why do you ask that?" I said. She shrugged. "You used to look tired all the time, but now you look lighter." I hugged her so tightly she squeaked. Then I whispered in her ear, "You'll never have to beg for love." And this time, I wasn't just saying it. I meant it. It was just after midnight when I heard the crying. At first, I thought it came from the unit next door, someone fighting or mourning or drunk. But then the voice cut through the drywall, clear and familiar and shaking. It was my mother. I stood frozen in the living room. Lily asleep on the couch under a fleece blanket. Her cheeks were flushed from the day's snow, her fingers still sticky with cocoa. My mother was on the phone. I couldn't hear the other person, but I didn't need to. Her voice cracked. I don't know what happened. She just shut everything off. A pause. We didn't mean to hurt her. We just didn't think she'd go this far. There it was. We didn't think. Not we didn't love, not we didn't value, just we didn't think. Her voice dropped lower, ragged. Everything's gone. The money, the car, the vacation. It's all gone. I stood by the door, hand on the knob, heart as still as glass. Then came my father's voice, quieter, tighter. She's being cruel. He didn't say she's hurting. He didn't say she's finally drawing a line. He said cruel, as if reclaiming your life was a form of violence. Then I heard it, the sound that had once gutted me to my core, my mother crying, full-throated, gasping between the words. Why would she do this to us? I closed my eyes. There was a time I would have melted, would have opened the door, dropped to my knees, let them fall into my arms, would have apologized for making them uncomfortable. But that girl, she was gone. I knocked once. The crying stopped instantly. Then I opened the door just a crack and stepped into the hallway. There she was, slumped at the bottom stair like a ghost of the woman I used to chase approval from. Her phone lay face down on the floor. Her eyes were red, swollen, and for the first time, confused. She looked up at me like I was a stranger, and maybe I was. Because this version of me didn't beg, didn't offer explanations, didn't fill in their silence with apologies. I stepped down one stair, just one, just enough to look her in the eye, and said, "Ask your favorite daughter." Her mouth opened, halfway between protest and plea, but I didn't let her finish. I turned around, walked back inside, and closed the door, not in anger, not in spite, in peace, because there's something holy about not needing to yell to be heard. There's something divine in watching people sit in the emptiness they once handed you. I locked the door, poured myself a glass of water, covered Lily with the blanket, brushed a curl off her cheek, and whispered, "You'll never have to earn your place in someone's love." She stirred softly, smiled in her sleep. Outside the door I heard nothing, not even footsteps, just the weight of their realization settling in the silence. The well was dry, the bank was closed, and the daughter they threw away, she wasn't standing there anymore. It's been 3 months since the gold box. 3 months since I shut every tab I'd left open in their lives, accounts, favors, financing, forgiveness. 3 months since I stopped hoping they'd choose me and started choosing myself. I didn't return the voicemails, didn't reply to the vague social media posts, didn't answer the "hope you're okay" texts that came with invisible strings. I just lived, and in that living, something wild happened. I started to breathe differently, slower, fuller, like I finally had lungs that belonged to me. Lily and I baked together on Saturdays. No occasion, no guests, just us, flour in our hair and frosting on our noses. One afternoon, over a batch of cinnamon cupcakes, she looked up at me and asked, "Mama, do you still love Grandma?" I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because, for the first time, I had a new one. "I love the version of her I hoped she could be," I said. "But sometimes, baby, the best love you give is the kind you give to yourself." She nodded, slow and solemn, like she understood more than a 7-year-old should. And maybe she did, because she'd seen it all. She saw me exhausted from giving, saw me forgotten in the middle of giving, and now she sees me whole. I used the vacation money they never repaid to take her to a mountain town for spring break. We hiked trails, sang badly to pop songs, wrote our own silly bedtime stories. I used the refund from the canceled family trip to start a small online baking business. Lily helped me name it. We called it the second slice, because that's what this is, a life we should have had all along. The peace we were always too polite to ask for, now ours, and full of flavor. Orders began trickling in, cupcakes, cookies, custom birthday cakes. People loved them, but more importantly, we loved making them. And for the first time, Every box we filled had something real inside. Last weekend, we celebrated Lily's 8th birthday. Just us, a few close friends, some neighbors who'd become family in the absence of blood. No gold boxes, no performative affection, no rankings, just laughter, messy frosting, and joy that wasn't borrowed from someone else's approval. As she blew out the candles, she leaned in and whispered, "This was the best birthday ever." I hugged her tight. "That's because this one was built with love," I said. "Ours. The kind that doesn't need to be earned. The kind that never gets measured against someone else's." She smiled like it made perfect sense. And in that moment, I realized something. They had handed me an empty box and laughed. But they never realized I was already full. I gave them everything I had, year after year, until I finally realized the best gift I could give was the one I kept.